name is Marcus Reed. I'm here to pick up my daughter.
I said step back. Hands where I can see them.
You're escalating a school pickup into a detention.
For what?
Being black in a suit?
Turn around. Hands behind your back.
This is ridiculous.
Don't move.
Cuffing you for my safety.
It is 8:17 in the morning outside Brookside Elementary, the kind of place with bright murals on the walls and a line of cars that crawls forward like a patient animal. The sun is already high enough to glitter off windshields. You can smell cut grass and the sugary hint of someone's coffee drifting from the parking lot. Teachers stand near the crosswalk with practiced smiles. Parents are half focused on schedules, half focused on their children's hair, shoes, lunch boxes, and last-second worries. Everything about the moment is ordinary, which is exactly why what happens next feels like a tear in reality, because it should have been a quick signature, a polite wait, and a child walking out with a teacher. Instead, it becomes the kind of scene that makes strangers stop moving and start recording, the kind that gets replayed later with captions and arguments and people pretending they would have handled it perfectly. Marcus Reed is 41. Tall, broad-shouldered, neatly dressed, and tired in a way that comes from responsibility, not from sleep. He has the calm posture of someone who learned early that panic gives other people permission to do whatever they want. He is also, quietly, a federal law enforcement officer, an FBI special agent out of the regional field office, assigned to violent crime and public corruption work that rarely makes headlines but often prevents them. He's the kind of agent who doesn't talk about the job at cookouts, who says he works for the government when someone asks, and who cares more about evidence than ego. But today, he isn't here as an agent. He's here as a father. His daughter Ava is 9 years old, bright and fearless, the kind of kid who asks grown-up questions at inconvenient times and expects real answers. She has a doctor's appointment late morning, and Marcus promised he'd pick her up early so she wouldn't miss the whole day. Brookside has strict sign-out procedures. Marcus knows that and follows them exactly. He parks in the visitor spots, not the staff lot. He walks in through the front doors, not a side entrance. He checks in at the vestibule, stays behind the taped line, and greets the receptionist like a human being. "Morning," he says. "I'm here for Ava Reed." The receptionist begins to nod, already reaching for the keyboard, but before she can finish the first click, Officer Whitaker steps into the lobby from the hallway like suspicion wearing a badge. Whitaker is mid-40s with a square jaw and a face that always seems slightly irritated, as if the world is constantly failing to show proper respect. He is the school resource officer assigned to Brookside, technically part of the local police department, but stationed on campus. He's supposed to keep kids safe, build trust, be the calm authority who prevents danger. That is the job on paper anyway. Whitaker looks at Marcus and doesn't greet him. "Who are you, and why are you here?" he says. Marcus answers smoothly. "Marcus Reed. I'm checking out my daughter for an appointment. I'm about to show my identification." Whitaker's eyes narrow at the word identification like it's a challenge. "Step back from the door," he says. Marcus glances down. He's already behind the line, already giving space. He takes one small step back anyway, because he is not here to argue. "Like this," he says. Whitaker doesn't relax. "Step out of the building," Whitaker says. Marcus blinks once. Out of the building. Whitaker points toward the exit. Now. That is the moment a normal morning becomes something else. Because Marcus knows the difference between a request and an order, and he knows the difference between a lawful order and an ego impulse. He stays polite, voice calm enough that it forces everyone nearby to pay attention. "Officer," he says, "I'm here to pick up my child. The school can verify my identity. I'm willing to stand right here while they do that, but I'm not leaving without a reason." Whitaker's lips curl slightly. "You don't get to decide what's a reason," he says. Marcus keeps his hands visible. "I'm asking for clarity," he replies. "Am I being detained? Yes or no?" Whitaker hears that question and something in him shifts, like he's just been reminded that this man knows the rules. "Yes," Whitaker snaps. "You're being detained for refusing to comply." Marcus nods slowly, as if marking a timestamp in his mind. "For what specific crime?" he asks. Whitaker doesn't answer the question. "Put your hands behind your back," he says. Marcus doesn't move his hands. He keeps them open, palms out, still. "I'm not resisting," he says, "but you need lawful justification. You have none." The receptionist looks up from her computer, eyes wide. A guidance counselor appears at the hallway entrance, sensing trouble. Two parents in the vestibule behind Marcus stop walking. One of them lifts a phone, not dramatically, just automatically, like instinct. Whitaker steps closer, voice hardening. "You people always have something to say," he mutters. It's quiet, but not quiet enough. Marcus hears it. The receptionist hears it. The guidance counselor hears it. And Marcus feels the familiar cold drop in his stomach. That sensation of being pulled into someone else's prejudice while you're standing perfectly still. He keeps his voice even, but it tightens like a knot. "Excuse me, officer," he says. Whitaker ignores that and reaches for his cuffs. The metal clicks shut around Marcus's wrists in a bright final sound that makes the whole lobby freeze. Marcus doesn't pull away. He doesn't jerk. He doesn't shout. He simply looks toward the staff and says, "I am not resisting. I am complying. I am requesting a supervisor. I am requesting you document your probable cause on record." Whitaker grips Marcus's upper arm and turns him toward the door, as if escorting a criminal out of a bank. And then, as if the universe is determined to make this as cruel as possible, Ava appears. Her teacher, Ms. Carter, walks her toward the front office with Ava's backpack in hand. Ava's face is bright for half a second, excited to leave early until she sees her father with his hands behind his back. The backpack slips a little in Ms. Carter's grip as she stares. Ava's mouth opens. "Daddy," she whispers. The word is soft, but it hits the room like a dropped weight. Marcus turns his head just enough to see her. "Ava, baby, you're okay," he says quickly. "Stay with Ms. Carter." Ms. Carter's voice shakes with anger. "Officer, that is her father," she says. "What are you doing?" Whitaker doesn't look at Ava. He doesn't look at Ms. Carter. He keeps his eyes on Marcus like this is a contest. Marcus's voice remains low, but it becomes sharper with urgency. "Officer Whitaker," he says, "you are handcuffing me in front of my child at her school. I need your name and badge number." Whitaker replies, "You'll get it at the station." Marcus says, "We are not going to a station. You have no lawful basis." Ava begins to cry. Confused tears at first, then fear. She clutches the straps of her backpack like the straps can keep her steady. If you're watching this, think about that moment. Not the adult argument, not the badge, not the pride. Think about the child watching her father get treated like a threat because an officer decided he did not belong. The assistant principal hurries into the lobby, face pale. "What is going on?" he asks. The receptionist speaks fast, desperate to correct the lie before it hardens. "He's here for Ava Reed," she says. "He showed up for pickup. He was about to show ID. Officer Whitaker ordered him out and then detained him." Whitaker cuts in, voice loud and performative. He was suspicious. He refused a lawful order. He was being disorderly. Marcus turns slightly, still calm. "Sir," he says to the assistant principal, "you can verify my identity. You can confirm my daughter is enrolled here. I am requesting you do that now." The assistant principal nods and tells the receptionist to pull up Ava's file. The receptionist clicks quickly, and within seconds Marcus's name appears as primary guardian. Verified, clear, simple. The receptionist points at the screen. "It's him," she says. "That's her father." Ms. Carter nods hard. "That's her father." The assistant principal looks at Whitaker. "Officer," he says carefully, "he is verified." Whitaker stares at the screen like it's an insult. And then he says the sentence that will destroy him later. "I don't care," he says. "He can be her father and still be a threat." You can feel the room recoil at those words, because that is no longer a mistake. That is a choice. Marcus hears it, and his voice becomes even steadier, almost clinical. "Officer," Marcus says, "you just said you don't care about verification. You just said I can be a threat anyway. That means you are not reacting to behavior. You are reacting to bias." Ava sobs harder. Ms. Carter turns her body slightly, trying to block Ava's view, but Ava keeps looking around her, like she needs to see the truth even if it hurts. Whitaker calls for backup. Another officer arrives, Officer Daniels, younger, alert, cautious. Daniels steps into the lobby and immediately reads the room. He sees a suited man in cuffs. He sees a child crying. He sees staff looking furious and frightened. He sees phones raised outside the glass doors. He looks at Whitaker. "What's the charge?" he asks. Whitaker says, "Disorderly. Refusal to comply." Daniels looks at Marcus. "Sir, did you threaten him?" Daniels asks. Marcus shakes his head once. "No. I'm here for my daughter. I asked if I was detained and why. That's it." The assistant principal nods. "He was calm," he says. "He didn't yell." Ms. Carter says, "He was respectful." Whitaker snaps at them. "Don't interfere." Daniels pauses, choosing his words like someone trying to stop a fire from spreading. "Officer Whitaker," he says, "why didn't you complete the verification process before cuffing him?" Whitaker bristles. "Because he refused to leave," Whitaker says. Daniels replies quietly, "That may not be lawful." Whitaker's eyes harden. "Are you questioning me?" Daniels answers, "I'm trying to keep you from turning this into a disaster." Marcus looks at Daniels and makes a decision. He knows this is the pivot point where truth can still cut through ego. Officer Daniels, Marcus says, I want to be clear. I am a federal law enforcement officer. I am an FBI special agent. My credentials are in my wallet in my front right pocket. I am requesting you retrieve them or allow me to present them. The air goes still. The receptionist's hands stop moving. The assistant principal's eyes widen. Ms. Carter whispers something under her breath, not a prayer, more like disbelief. Whitaker laughs, but it's the laugh of a man trying to smother fear. Yeah, right, Whitaker says. Everyone says that. Marcus doesn't blink. Verify it, he says. Daniels looks at Whitaker. Whitaker hesitates, and that hesitation tells you everything. A man who was so certain a moment ago is now suddenly cautious, because caution means you know you might be wrong. Daniels turns to Marcus. Do I have consent to retrieve your wallet? Daniels asks. Yes, Marcus replies. Front right pocket. Daniels reaches slowly, professional, careful, removes the wallet, opens it, and then his face changes. Not dramatically, just enough. His posture straightens, his voice drops. He looks back at Marcus, then at the credentials, then at Whitaker. He's verified, Daniels says. Uncuff him. Whitaker's mouth tightens. Daniels repeats it louder, firmer. Uncuff him now. Whitaker unlocks the cuffs with a stiff, irritated motion, like he's angry at the metal for obeying. The cuffs fall away. Red marks ring Marcus's wrists. Marcus rubs them once, not to perform pain, but because pain is real. Then he turns immediately to Ava. He kneels in front of her, lowering himself so his eyes are level with hers. Ava, baby, look at me, he says softly. You're safe. Daddy's right here. Ava's voice shakes. Why did he do that? She asks. Marcus swallows and chooses honesty that a child can carry. Some people make bad choices when they're scared, he says. Some people decide a story about someone before they know the truth. But we're going to handle this the right way. Ava sniffs. Are you going to jail? She whispers. Marcus shakes his head. No, baby. I'm not going anywhere. The principal arrives next, moving fast, face tight with the expression of someone who already senses liability. She looks from Marcus's wrists to Ava's tears to Whitaker's posture. What happened? She asks. Ms. Carter answers immediately. He came to pick up Ava. He followed procedure. Officer Whitaker ordered him out and cuffed him in front of Ava. Daniel steps forward and adds the detail that changes everything for administrators. He is a federal agent, Daniel says. The principal's eyes widen slightly, then narrow, because the words federal agent don't just mean embarrassment. They mean consequences that travel upward. A supervisor from the police department arrives within minutes, then another. The lieutenant listens to accounts from staff, from Daniels, from Whitaker. The stories do not match Whitaker's version. Staff describe Marcus as calm. Video exists. Body cameras exist. The lobby cameras exist. The lieutenant's face becomes the face of someone doing damage control in real time. He instructs an officer to preserve all footage immediately and to ensure nothing is deleted. He asks Marcus if he's okay. Marcus's answer is the kind that makes adults uncomfortable because it's not about him. I'm physically fine, Marcus says. My child is not, and that matters. After the immediate chaos, Marcus still has to do the mundane thing he came for. He signs Ava out. He walks her to the car. He buckles her in. Ava is quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy. Halfway out of the parking lot, she whispers, "Did I do something wrong?" Marcus answers instantly, "No, you did nothing wrong. Neither did I." Ava nods, but her face says she doesn't fully believe it yet because the world just taught her the opposite with handcuffs. That afternoon, Marcus does what he's trained to do. He documents everything while his memory is clean. Times, names, exact words. He writes down the sequence, including the moment Whitaker said "you people" and the moment Whitaker said he didn't care about verification. He takes photos of the cuff marks. He requests copies of footage. He files a formal complaint with the police department and the school district. He asks Ms. Carter and the receptionist if they're willing to provide statements, and they say yes without hesitation because they are furious and ashamed and protective of Ava. Marcus also tells his FBI supervisor, not as a threat, but as transparency. His supervisor listens, silent for a long moment, then says, "I'm sorry this happened to you and your daughter." Then he adds, "We're going to make sure you're supported." Within days, someone's phone video from outside the glass doors appears online, shaky but clear enough to show cuffs, a child crying, and adults pleading. The clip spreads fast because it hits something raw. Local news calls for comment. The police department releases a standard statement about an internal review. The school district promises to cooperate. Whitaker's union issues a defensive response about officer safety. People argue in comment sections like they were there. Some say Marcus should have just left and come back later. Some say the officer was right to be cautious. But the footage, once the body camera clips leak and then officially release, tells a simpler story. Marcus was calm. Marcus was verified. Whitaker escalated anyway. The internal investigation moves quickly because the evidence is strong. The lobby camera shows staff confirming Marcus as Ava's father. It shows Whitaker ignoring that. Body camera audio captures the comments Whitaker tries to deny. Statements from staff align. The department concludes Whitaker violated policy regarding detentions, use of restraints, and professional conduct. The school district places him on administrative leave, then suspends him from campus pending final disciplinary action. Whitaker claims he felt threatened by Marcus's tone and refusal to leave. But when asked what Marcus actually did, there is no threat, only questions. And questions are not violence. Questions are accountability. Marcus does not rush to sue for attention. He consults an attorney because he is a father first, and because Ava's tears were not a minor inconvenience. They were harm. The complaint that follows is thorough and relentless, the kind of document that reads like a blueprint of everything Whitaker did wrong. It alleges unlawful detention, excessive restraint under the circumstances, racial discrimination, and emotional distress, especially to a child. It names Whitaker, the police department, and the entities responsible for oversight of the school resource officer program. The amount sought is $8.2 million, not as a random number, but as a statement about the scale of damage when authority acts without restraint and children pay the price. Once the lawsuit is filed, everything becomes more serious. Depositions are scheduled, policies are requested, training records are demanded, body camera retention rules become relevant, emails between the police department and the school district are pulled. Whitaker is questioned under oath. He tries to defend his actions with vague language about safety and suspicion, but under oath, vague language collapses. He admits Marcus never threatened him. He admits Marcus never tried to flee. He admits he did not allow staff to complete verification before cuffing him. He admits he ignored the verification on screen because, in his words, he couldn't be sure. Then he's asked why he didn't simply ask for additional confirmation instead of handcuffing a father in front of a child. He has no answer that doesn't sound like pride. Meanwhile, the community reaction grows beyond one case. Parents start talking about other times they felt targeted during pickup. Staff quietly describe Whitaker as aggressive with certain families. The district holds meetings and announces new procedures requiring staff verification to be respected, requiring de-escalation steps before restraints, and restricting handcuff use on campus, except in true emergencies. The police department announces additional training on bias, constitutional detentions, and de-escalation. Some people call it performative. Others call it overdue. Marcus watches all of it with the kind of exhaustion that comes from knowing reforms often arrive only after harm. Ava begins therapy, not because she's broken, but because Marcus refuses to let fear settle in her like a permanent tenant. Some days she's fine, laughing, drawing, asking about planets and fingerprints the way she always has. Other days she asks questions that break adults. If someone with a badge can do that to you when you did nothing wrong, how do I know I'm safe? She asks. Marcus answers with careful truth. Most people with authority want to do the right thing, he tells her. But sometimes people misuse it. When they do, we don't stay silent. We don't accept it. We document, we speak up, and we make sure it has consequences. As the case approaches trial, the pressure increases. The city and the department don't want a jury to watch a child crying while an officer says he doesn't care about verification. They don't want cross-examination on training failures. They don't want headlines about a school resource officer acting like a gatekeeper deciding who belongs. Settlement talks begin. Marcus's attorney demands not only money, but policy changes, oversight measures, and an acknowledgement that what happened was wrong. The department tries to minimize, then realizes the evidence is too clean to fight without risk. Whitaker attempts to resign before termination is finalized, a move that angers parents because it feels like escaping a label. But resignation doesn't erase the footage. It doesn't erase sworn testimony. It doesn't erase the fact that a child learned fear at a school door. In the end, the matter resolves through a settlement that includes financial compensation and mandated reforms. Though not everything Marcus asked for, the headlines focus on the money because money is easy to understand. But the real weight is the paper trail and the policy shift. The fact that staff now have clearer power to intervene. The fact that restraints are restricted. The fact that detentions require documented justification. The fact that oversight is no longer a handshake agreement. Marcus does not celebrate. He doesn't feel victorious. He feels relieved that Ava will see, at least once, that the system can be forced to admit wrongdoing. If you're wondering what the bigger lesson is, it isn't that lawsuits fix everything. They don't. The lesson is that knowledge changes the power dynamic, even when it can't prevent harm in the moment. Marcus knew how to stay calm, how to keep his hands visible, how to ask if he was detained, how to demand a supervisor, how to document exact phrases, and how to preserve evidence. He did everything right, and he still got cuffed. That's the part people hate to admit, because it means the problem was never his behavior. The problem was an assumption that came before behavior. And if you're also thinking, I would have just left, consider what that teaches. If the rule becomes, leave when you're told, even when you did nothing wrong, then rights become optional, and authority becomes personal preference. Marcus acknowledges the risk, because yes, challenging an officer can be dangerous. He knows that better than most. That's why he didn't shout. That's why he didn't move suddenly. That's why he kept his tone measured. He tried to de-escalate while still refusing to surrender to an unlawful order. The danger came from the officer's bias, not from Marcus's voice. Months later, Marcus returns to Brookside for a school event. The building looks the same, but the air feels different. Like everyone is more aware of how fragile trust can be. There is a new officer assigned, one who keeps a respectful distance and greets parents like they belong. Ava holds Marcus's hand for an extra second before running to her friends. She turns back and smiles, quick, like she's reminding him she's still herself. Marcus breathes out slowly and watches her go. One father, one morning, a few terrible minutes, and a system that was forced, at least a little, to admit that being wrong has a price. If you've ever been in a situation where someone with authority decided you didn't belong, you already understand why this story matters. And if you haven't, remember this anyway. Stay calm, keep your hands visible, ask clear questions, request a supervisor, document everything, preserve evidence, and if you have kids watching, remind them of the truth before the world tries to replace it. You did nothing wrong, you belong. And sometimes, when you refuse to accept injustice as normal, you can make it change.